Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're excited to hear from this year's AQR Parker Prize winner, Rhiannon Pratt, who is a research manager at Mel Research. Today, Rhiannon will be giving us insight into what a social research agency does, who they work with, and the impact their research can have. She'll also share how social research brings together both qualitative and quantitative methods to deliver truly powerful insights. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Alice Langthorne, Activation Manager at Box Clever and a member of the AQR Sparks Committee. AQR Sparks is a branch of the AQR focused on igniting and accelerating careers in qualitative market research, especially for those with less than 6 years of experience. And we aim to support personal growth, development, and confidence within qualitative research. I'm also joined today by Lydia Griffin, Senior Research Executive at Trinity McQueen and fellow AQR Sparks Committee member, who will be facilitating the Q&A at the end of the session. I'm really looking forward to today's session, having had the pleasure of meeting Rhiannon over the past couple of weeks. I know she's incredibly passionate about social research, and I'm confident she'll do a fantastic job sharing her knowledge and experience with us all today. So if you have any questions during this webinar, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A. And Lydia will help guide us through them at the end. So with that, I'm really happy to hand over to Rhiannon.
Alice, that's really nice. I'll be talking through social research today and what social research is, who it helps, and oh, hold on, the dog's just coming up. Gus is a Cocker Spaniel who will be helping today, apparently. So to start off, if we define social research, it's research that, as you would expect from the name, kind of looks at society and interactions within society and people's behaviour and attitudes. Within social research, we are looking to address societal issues and challenges, such as kind of quite sensitive topics sometimes. So it can be things like antisocial behaviour or experiences of crime or disease. And it's used mostly by public organisations such as governments and charities. So that's a little bit of a brief description there. So what it aims to do, as I say, is to really make change for the people particularly that it is researching, to the research group. So it can be a community or a particular kind of type of person. We look at kind of creating research that can relate to complex issues such as inequality or discrimination. And by doing the social research, we're hoping to give a voice to the people who are participating, who may traditionally not have had a voice or an opportunity to speak before. It's very focused on making sure that participants are brought along with the research and that it's not research being done to people, it's research being done for and with people, and it delivers on what people really need and what they are saying themselves. It's really important in that sense to not kind of bring your own bias in it and actually accurately represent what is being said by participants. So within social research, we have kind of two audiences. There's the client who is funding your research. So they're your policymakers, your social landlords, your public organisations, your charities. They could be things like local authorities as well. And then your second audience, as I've kind of alluded to, are the people that you are doing the research with or on, like that broader population. And as I say, because we're doing it for the benefit of those people, it's a balancing act between delivering what the client needs and the evidence they need and what the people themselves need in that group. So it's it can be a balancing act sometimes. Sometimes you have clients coming in who have decided what they want the takeaways and the findings to be, but actually the group of people participating think something different, and it's finding that balance between the two that is, I suppose, palatable findings for them and actionable findings, but also accurately representing what is being said to you. So some of the key topics of focus we look at community dynamics. So that can be relationships within a community, things like community cohesion and safety, or community resilience. So we run things like resident surveys for those, or tenant satisfaction surveys as well. We look at service delivery, so that can be things like health services, housing services, repairs, government services, and how they're funded, and asking kind of residents what they think about what's funded and the services they receive. We also look to understand public attitudes, so that can be towards quite sensitive topics sometimes, such as things like assisted dying, and attitudes towards that and whether that should be legal. We talk to people about their mental health and mental health provisions, and things like the environment as well, like we track attitudes towards the environment within certain regions. We also do work with charities, which is originally how I came to MEL research. I worked client side for the NSPCC and then jumped over to MEL. And for the charities, that's where we maybe get the more, what you would say maybe typical market research in a sense. We do kind of market segmentations for them, supporter research, brand tracking, and looking at how they can maximise their supporters' input and lifetime value so that they can then support the communities they're trying to help. So it does still have that social kind of lens through it of helping the charity so that they can help society. We also look at things like impact analysis. So that can be if an intervention is introduced, we would then work with the people who had been impacted by that and understand over time maybe how their lives are changing, how their well-being's changing, and really like look at the effects that that has had on their life. And within that as well, we're looking to kind of build the capacity of those people taking part so that any changes that may have been made by that intervention are then able to be carried through by that community. So throughout all of that, there's a little bit of, obviously, I've highlighted some of the differences between market research and social research. So in AIM, social research is very focused on that societal change. So it's ultimately for the benefit of the individuals who are the focus of it. So be that community, a town, or a particular kind of population. That's what social research is trying to do. It's trying to understand where those people are and how their situation can be improved or changed and what they want. Whereas market research probably a bit more cynically is for the benefit of the business and the people funding the research. It's about understanding kind of consumer preferences and products and sales, and understanding basically how products can sell more, rather than making that social change. Social research kind of covers a broader range of topics in that sense. It can be anything that kind of is a focus for the funder. So as we've said, things like housing, homelessness, health, well-being, all things like that, they can all come into social research. Whereas market research is that little bit more limited there. And it's not to say that social research and market research never overlap and they don't interact at all. It's not two kind of completely distinct beings that I think, or at least in my opinion, where they exist on kind of a continuum. So you might do within social research ones that kind of go more towards the market research side, and within social market research you might have ones with a bit more of a social research focus. So it's not that they're very distinct and you can't cross between the two. There's no reason you couldn't. It's about the skills you have that you can apply across those two types of research. So One of the really key things with social research is we often work with kind of, as I've mentioned, research participants who are typically maybe not those who would have a voice within research. It may be that they're overlooked, or they find it harder to access research, or they're not asked to participate. They may not have the financial kind of capacity to be able to go to a focus group, to travel all the time. So with social research, we have to kind of work slightly differently to ensure that we are engaging the people who really need to be listened to. And that can involve kind of making sure that we change our methods a little bit. Sampling can be taken more of, I suppose, a less traditional sense of we might use community organisers or snowballing approaches to sampling, which in kind of classical research would potentially be seen as skewing your sample base a little bit. But if we want to know what a population really thinks, we need to make sure we're talking to the people who know, not talking to the people who have given themselves voices for these people. So it's really important as well when we're doing it that we are conscious of the multiple identities and how they intersect for people, and how that can influence their behavior or their attitude. It's not as simple as, right, we've got this person X, this is their gender, ethnicity, XYZ, and this is what they said. It's about understanding how those all kind of overlap, and how their background and experience has then shaped what they're saying to us. And that it does involve a little bit of kind of people skills isn't the right way to put it, but an understanding of people, and how people may react in certain situations, and being able to adapt to that. So when we work with kind of the diverse audiences, what's really important is that we make sure we adjust research to make sure that it's accessible for everyone and that it's engaging with them. So as I've mentioned, we can go through community groups who may have those connections and may be able to ask certain groups to take part, or provide a space for kind of a focus group, or send out surveys and help us reach people in that way. It could be that we keep audiences who are not traditionally involved in research involved throughout the process. So that could be workshops, co-design of surveys, giving them updates on what findings of the research are, sending emails to kind of say where we're up to, just so that people feel, as I've said, that research is being done with them, not to them. And we're reminding people that we are taking on board their feedback. It's not that we've gone into a community, asked them loads of questions, then handed over a report to a client and wandered off, because that's doing nothing to build that trust. So along with doing the research, it's part of our role is to build the trust in those groups, amongst those groups, in researchers, and showing that actually they are valued and their voices will be listened to. So yeah, that's kind of the important part of making sure we keep people updated and we keep people coming along with the research. And in terms of vulnerable audiences, I mentioned a few of like not traditionally been able to take part, maybe because a focus group is when they're working, or they can't find childcare to be able to participate in something, or they've not got internet access. It can be things like that. So one of the things within social research is when kind of designing that research at the beginning, it's thinking about the audiences, who do you want to reach and how. So we offer kind of multiple options for completion. So you'll have an online survey, but then there's the option of postal or telephone, and your online survey will be kind of suitable for people with visual impairments, or it can be used, our survey platform uses text to speech. So we're making sure that lots of different people can take part. We offer multiple languages on our telephones so that people can ring up and complete the survey in a different, in their kind of their own language so that we can make sure that people are fully understanding and fully able to take part in the surveys. We can do things kind of on more of a qual side. We can do different approaches to interviewing that can involve walking along and talking to someone as they just go about doing something, so it's not in their home, it's on neutral ground, it's things like that. And people tend to feel a bit more open when you walk side to side because it doesn't feel confrontational. We can do direct kind of go knocking on doors for interviews to get that target population, because if we want to talk to a particular community who are living in an area, the best way to do that is to go directly to them. So with obviously vulnerable or harder to reach or kind of sensitive topics, we have quite a serious consideration of ethics that we undertake as part of social research. We have at MEL, we have an ethics board, and they kind of oversee what we do, and we have safeguarding procedures and they're in place. But we have to, when we're designing the research, and it's the same for any research, we have to make sure that it's not causing any harm through that research we're doing, whether to the interviewer or the participant. Whenever we're doing something on sensitive topics, we'll always have kind of signposting at the end of a survey towards kind of support services should they need it. We have to pay a lot of attention as well to the power relations that are at play in research. As I say, we're giving a voice to people, but in doing that, it's very much like it's coming through the researchers. So we've got to make sure that we've not got our own bias that is then forming or changing what people are saying. Like if you're researching someone's attitudes to the environment or crime or something, we've got to accurately report that, and we've got to make sure that we're directly representing what they're saying. And sometimes that's not always easy to do when you want to sanitize things potentially to make them more palatable or more kind of accepted, but that's not what we're here for. So that kind of comes on to the next point of making sure that everything within the analysis is representative and we're not kind of making our own leaps and trying to interpret what there's a level of interpretation and analysis, but it's not for us to go and say, well, so and so said this, so this is what they mean. That's not what we're doing, and there needs to be a level of adaptability as well. If someone acts in a way that is kind of unexpected, we need to be able to think on our feet sometimes and think, all right, so this people's attitudes are completely different to what they thought we would be. How are we going to change it? So it's that adaptability and making sure that we're doing the digging and we're making sure we're getting actually at what people care about, not just telling us what they think we want to hear. So as well, kind of on the ethics, informed consent, as within any research, it's really, really important. Particularly with the sort of research we do, we have to set out kind of what research will cover from the offset and make sure we've fully painted a picture so that someone's not coming into a research project thinking they're talking about living in, I don't know, Bridlington, but then we ask them about living in Bridlington and ask them all these personal things and have you experienced crime? Has this ever happened to you? Has that ever happened to you? Because that obviously is going to make people potentially disengage from the research, but also like it could potentially cause harm if someone wasn't prepared to talk about something and then we're asking about it. It's not the route we want to go down. So it's not in ethics as well what we have to consider, and it's not always an easy decision to make, as we have to think about who is someone fully capable of giving that informed consent. Have they got the capacity to do so? Are we acting correctly and to our own kind of values if we're letting someone, or if we're, I don't like letting, but it's the only word I can think of, if we're letting people take part when we actually think that there may be an issue there of kind of that capacity, and we have to make that decision. So there's kind of a lot of things within social research you're balancing. So you're trying to give voices to as many people as possible in those audiences, but also at the end of the day, we have to protect people and look after people and make sure that no one's coming to any sort of harm through the research that we're conducting. So that's everything on kind of what social research is. A really good way, I think, of putting these things into perspective and talking about what social research is to go through examples of what sort of projects we work on. So these here, plug MEL research, these are all kind of clients we have worked with, and it's all on our website and case studies. If anybody ever wants to read more about them, they're all on there. So we've done kind of quite diverse, as you can see, projects there. We've done one with Kick It Out that was about misogyny and sexism in football. Mine, CPSL, was support for Muslim mums that we did. Help for Heroes, we looked at their audiences and how they could better communicate what they were doing, because Help for Heroes, obviously, whilst we were in Afghanistan in the 2011 sort of time, it was big and it was in the news and we were seeing a lot about it, but over time it's kind of fallen on a back burner. So they wanted to understand how they could kind of show that there was still a role for them in society and why people should still support them. NSPCC, we've done all sorts with. We've done things around child safety online, professionals, understanding of the different things that the NSPCC offers. We've looked at different things that professionals might be interested in purchasing, like training from the NSPCC. Yorkshire Housing is kind of one of our bread and butter clients. We do TSMs with Yorkshire Housing. So a TSM, sorry if I'm telling you all how to suck eggs, but TSMs are regulations on social housing providers that were introduced after Grenfell that understand kind of how tenants perceive the services they receive, whether they're satisfied with their landlord, whether their landlord is delivering on their responsibilities. So they form quite a big part of what we do. So that's them. Breakthrough Type 1 diabetes is about understanding people's kind of experiences and their journey in getting support and how that's had an effect on their life. English Heritage, we've done all sorts of broad stuff with them. We've done some audience pieces with them, and we've done bits about kind of how they can continue to find a role in kind of a changing world and I suppose changing attitudes as well to heritage and how they can continue to be important for society and for the culture and heritage sector, and how they can continue to play a part in the fabric of the social fabric of the UK. So yeah, that's just a sample of the things we do, and I think there's never 2 days and never the same. I know everyone says that about every job, but the variety is kind of incredible on the things we work on. We have all sorts of clients, all sorts of work, thing that you wouldn't even think that we would be doing research on. Yeah, I would recommend social research to anyone. I think if you've got any sort of feeling of wanting what you do to have an impact and feel like tangible change and feeling like you are making that change and you're using your skills for something, I would always plug social research, but obviously I'm a little bit biased. But yeah, it's wonderful, and my year and a bit working in it, it's been fantastic, and I would recommend it to everyone. That's kind of my presentation. Just have a look at the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Rhiannon. That was absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for sharing the whole world of social research with us. We do have time, like you just mentioned, for the Q&A. So we've got some questions that have come through, and please do pop any other questions in the Q&A box, and we'll try and get through them as much as we can. The first one, which is a Rhiannon specific question, really. You mentioned the work at NSPCC. But how did you really get into social research, and what advice would you really have for someone looking to make that transition into social research from another sector?
Yeah, so I had worked at a few charities. To not make it too long and boring a story, I did my master's during COVID and then worked at a charity and then moved to the NSPCC. And I'd worked on that client side, kind of commissioning research, and thought, actually, I really want to kind of work on the side of doing the research rather than just commissioning it and handing it off to other people. And I think my advice would be to look for kind of where have you got any experience that could help you get into kind of that social side of research. So like working in a charity or doing kind of work on certain topics that could help you get into it. I think there's no set rules for transitioning into it. I think what's most important is having a real passion about what you're doing and being able to communicate that. And I think if you've got basic research skills, there's no reason that you can't move into social research. It's that basic kind of, do you have an interest in people and what they're doing, and can you convey that, and have you got the basic skills? I think having an appetite to learn is obviously, like everyone says it about every job, but there's, as I've said, there's so many different things you can work across and so many different strands that showing that you've got that willingness to learn about all those different things, and maybe actually find you have a passion for housing surveys, things like that, that can be something you develop. And I think it's giving it a go and applying for jobs. And if you find a social research company and you apply for a job and they say, no, sorry, we're looking for someone else, ask why. See if there's any experience you can get, or if there's anything that specifically they haven't, like, that you've missed on your CV or something. But honestly, I think if you're willing and you're interested in it, I think there's nothing specifically you need beyond those basic research skills, really.
That kind of answers the next question, which was about obviously you having a master's degree, but then about what other routes there are if you don't have that. So is it more about the experiences, would you say?
I would say, yeah, work experience is more valuable. I think having a master's, in my perspective, was great and I loved it, and it was on something I really enjoyed doing. And it kind of helped me solidify how interested I was and how, like, that I wanted to work in kind of social research and social justice and things like that. But a lot of the skills I've got have actually come from other jobs I've done. And rather than my master's itself, I wouldn't say, obviously, if you want to really specialize and there's certain methods and there's things you want to really learn in depth, then getting a master's in it, absolutely. But I wouldn't say not having a master's will stop you at all. If you've got work experience but no master's, then it doesn't matter, honestly.
Fantastic. One other question was about what would you see as the relative benefits and drawbacks of working on client side versus agency? Obviously you've got that great kind of experience of having both. So
I think the benefit of working agency side is the variety of it. You're always working different topics. If you're kind of hitting a wall on something, you can go and look at something else and give yourself that bit of a break. And you get to see lots of different things and lots of kind of contribute to lots of different things that you've seen the impact of. I think where client side, the benefits of it is kind of it's the other side of that coin in a way, of that you actually get to focus on solely one thing, and you see all the work you're doing and the research, how it forms that part of the bigger picture for the organisation you're working for, which can sometimes be missing from social research. You don't always see, with the clients we work with, we sometimes do see the kind of impact, and people will communicate that and will come back for repeats or tracking studies. But sometimes it is that trust that people are going to take the research away and do something with it. So yeah, that's kind of one of the drawbacks, I would suppose, of social research.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got some more questions coming in, which is great. One is, what are the 3 key skills would you say you need to do your job?
Key skills. I wouldn't say there's any definitive 3 that if you don't have, you can't get into it. I wouldn't ever put that sort of limit on yourself. Give it a go. I would say you need the basic research skills, as I've mentioned, just to help you kind of have that adaptability and that knowledge when you go into social research, right? This is my community that I'm trying to engage with. What's the best research method? So I think you need quite a broad understanding of different methods and stuff that you can apply to it. I think people skills, at the company I work with, we do a lot of project management. So there's client communications you're doing internal kind of management of people, and then there's also people you're going out to speak to, and so there's that sort of kind of direct communication of being able to understand where clients are coming from, but also communicate findings to. But then also when you're designing research materials, understanding how things may be perceived or understood, so that you're not being very XYZ about kind of a survey and not it basically been tick boxing. It's that way of thinking a bit differently. Okay, if I was coming at this from an angle of so-and-so person, how would I interpret that question? So I think there needs to be that bit of understanding of how people work. And number 3, can't think of number 3.
They're brilliant. I think that's honestly more than enough. Fantastic. One was also, where are the best places to look for social research job opportunities?
Oh, I'm not sure actually. I found MEL Research through kind of working with them. I would say probably LinkedIn is a good place to find things. People are always posting on stuff and make connections with people you've never met, and they might be able to point you to things. I think maybe like do a quick Google as well, which I know I remember when I was looking for jobs, and it's the worst thing, and you think I don't even know where to start to look. But yeah, LinkedIn, reach out to people who are working in the sector. They'll be able to point you towards things. And then also, yeah, it depends what angle you're coming at it from as well. Like if you're already in a job and you have different connections, people might be able to point you towards it. Whereas if you're coming straight from uni, it can obviously be harder to look. But yeah, I would say number 1 would be LinkedIn, and then I will ask at the company I'm at and see, because a lot of people I work with have worked at other research agencies and then come over to it. So I'll ask where they found out about it.
Fantastic. So LinkedIn and networking.
Yeah, it's what everyone says again, but it is the way to do it.
Yeah, fantastic. I know we've also got to focus on qual, but just wondering, how important is it to have a background in quant as well as qual research methods to enter the social sector?
It is. The company I work for, we have dedicated teams. So we have a qual team and a quant team, and people, you can specialize as far as you want. If I would say is like advice for early career, don't pigeonhole yourself too early, just because there can be a lot of different options, and it's worth having a few skills in different places, so that if you find that you want to move to qual or you want to move to quant, you've got that basic knowledge. But at the same time, if you are someone who has always done quant, you know you love quant, go down the quant route. If you know you're someone who absolutely hates numbers and they make your brain boggle, and you just like talking to people and you love the qual side of things and the depth, then you're fine as well going down the qual side. I wouldn't say you're particularly like cutting yourself off at the knees or anything if you go down one route or the other. I personally like mixed methods, but that's a preference because I like to get the framework from the quant and then build it up with the qual. But yeah, it's what you enjoy the most and what you think actually gets the best out of you. If you know when you're doing quant, it's something that you're not really interested in, then it's not, doesn't matter, don't do it.
Fantastic. One is that you mentioned about ethical considerations from a participant perspective, but how do you tackle it from a researcher perspective, given that there's often like sensitive topics? You know, like what considerations are there from like that angle, like support and guidance do you get or feel it's important to get in this space?
I think it is really, really important to have that support for us because we're obviously listening to people's stories and we're reading the open comments. And when you read 2,000 comments about things, it can get to you. And it's the support we have there is we have kind of mental health first aiders and employee assistants and things like that. And within who you're working with as well, everyone kind of knows what it's like. So you can build that little community within a research agency. And I would say, like, do get a few people who you can just talk to. And if you come off a really difficult interview, have a quick debrief with them and just talk to them and say, oh, well, that was really tough. And there's nothing wrong either with finding things difficult. If you've listened to something and it's really hard, there's nothing wrong with going and asking for help or saying, actually, can I take 5 minutes? Because that was quite difficult to listen to. And that's, you're only human. And I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge. And I had another point. It's just got out of my head. I think as well, when we're designing or when we're bidding for work within the agency, we'll look at people who have the skills to work in it and also experience, but be considerate as well of kind of how close people are to a topic, and the judgment there of actually, can you stay distance from a particular topic as much as you're going to need to be? So there's also that side of kind of looking after researchers as well, of you might have a really deep interest in a certain topic or personal experience, but sometimes actually it's not the best fit for you, and yeah, that decision is made as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. There's those self-biases as well that come into it then if you're very closely linked to a topic. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. One is looking at analysis. So when it comes to analysis in social research, how do you navigate accurately representing the voices of the people that you speak to, but also trying to draw conclusions? So you're looking for similarities and differences between the audience, reading between the lines of what people say.
Yeah, so how I like to do it is I will kind of read things in a lot of depth and go over things, and after interviews and things, write down after an interview kind of for myself a quick bit of, right, what were the key things that this person said, and have a theme there. And I think as you start to do more and more interviews, you see a picture coming together in your head of things and of themes coming out, and that is where I would recommend you kind of start is with that picture and then build that out and think, okay, so this person's talked very strongly about this. Did that come out in another interview, and or did they phrase it slightly differently? And I think it can be difficult because, as you say, we're trying to give a voice to lots of different people, but also one person's opinion isn't reflective of a whole group necessarily. So it's having that kind of experience and foresight when you're doing things as well, to think, right, actually this person, because I think, well, on some interviews you can tell there's people who really want their voice to be heard and will make sure they get their point across, and it's recognizing where actually there's someone like that and being able to kind of mediate the impact of that on the analysis. I think it's hard not to say that there's an instinct to it as well, of when you're talking to people and that reading between the lines, and when you're interviewing people and talking to them in person, I think it does come across. You can tell a lot from people's kind of body language and the way they say things. You can get, that's how you read between the lines, and that's where those people skills as well come in, to be able to read the way someone's reacting to a question. And as well, it's not on the analysis side, so, but I think it does come into that telling people stories. Don't be too wedded to a topic guide. Like, you can, a topic guide is great and it guides you and it gives you things, but if an interview is pulling you in a certain direction and telling you that something else is really important, follow that, because it might actually completely bring up something else on a new topic that you hadn't even considered, which you can then follow through with other interviews. And I suppose I would say analysis is a bit like a jigsaw of taking everybody's different bits that they're saying and putting them together and finding those common strands and those bits. I've mixed my metaphor there, and getting that whole picture together and understanding it. Because in a lot of the research I've done in telling individual stories, actually, as you start to consider them in that whole, you can very quickly kind of see that person said this thing about this, and if I draw, like, you can cross-reference, and some of that is just sitting with interviews or focus groups and just sitting in them and then completely immersing yourself in them, and you can listen to them 3 times and then suddenly you realise you've not heard something that you've heard on the 3rd time, and yeah, it just trust the process.
Absolutely, I love that. Thank you so much. We've got one question about, how do you challenge ableism in your research methods? So do you come across any like red tape that prevents you from using accessibility accommodations in the name of protecting the research?
I've never come across any red tape with it. We're quite lucky in the sense that a lot of people who come to us because they want to engage with audiences who are more diverse and things like that, and you challenge them. If someone is doing something, it comes from that bit of confidence of recognizing that you are, even at 25 or whatever, like, you're the expert in it and that's what people are paying you for. And if you have the experience to say, actually no, this is excluding a significant audience who you want to talk to, say it. It can be scary too, and if you need to get someone higher up in your business and flag it with them, then yeah. But I've never come across kind of any red tape in terms of people saying, no, we definitely will not do this. I've come across people not being aware of how much they would have to do to reach certain groups, and that's difficult in its own way, of people thinking, well, don't you just send out an invite and people will... So that's explaining actually the cost implications of what they want to do and being realistic from the outset. But yeah, I would say if you ever come across any sort of ableism and along that line, just challenge it. That's what you're there for.
Fantastic, thank you so much. I'm conscious of time, so I think we'll pull the Q&A to a close, but that has been so fascinating. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for joining. We hope you've enjoyed the session as much as I have, and again, a huge thank you to Rhiannon for taking us through the world of social research. Please do feel free to reach out to Rhiannon on LinkedIn with any specific social research questions, and do please keep an eye out on LinkedIn for any more events from AQR Sparks. Please do feel free to drop us a message as well if you've got any questions, you'd like to find out more about us. We're keen to put on more webinars just like this in the future. So if there are any topics that you'd like to cover or keen to hear more, yeah, please do drop us a note. So thank you so much again, and we hope you have a lovely rest of your week. Thank you.